there's a lot to be said about Kurt's camera corral. I mean, it was in business for 7 decades, and this is the short history, because I only had about 30 minutes in order to get in Jim's wonderful pictures of the rail yards. So I had to kind of rush through the history. I would like to do another version of this at some time in the future in which I get into more details. One of the fun things that I learned about Kurt's is that he sponsored Ozzie and Harriet every week on KOB locally. And how he sponsored them was he gave live commercials. And in his very often held smoking pipe and dressed, you know, with a suit and tie, he would then talk about the wonders of photography and Kurt's camera while he was giving his commercial in the studio at KOB. And I just sent a note this morning to KOB in the hopes that maybe they have some collections of those commercials, because I think they would be very, very interesting from a historical standpoint to see Kurt live talking about his camera store. So, you know, keep your fingers crossed. There may be a part 2. The movies do it, why can't I? So first off, I really have to give a big thank you to Diane Schaller and to Richard Reddy. In 2017, they went to Jim's house at the time, Jim Kubié, and they did one of their video history interviews. And I used a lot of the one that they did. They did 3 hours of interviews. And Jim was nice enough to sit through 3 hours of them asking him questions. Wow. So I thought that was really nice of them to do that, and nice of Jim to do that. I think he did it not as self-aggrandizement, but because he had owned the store for a while, and he loved his father and thought his father did a great job, and I think he did too. The rail yards photos are also from my volunteer work here at the museum. On Friday afternoons, I'm here scanning black and white prints of all sorts of things. And I came across Jim Kubié's photos of the rail yards and instantaneously fell in love with them. It does work. So the Kubié family story is quite dramatic, actually, and I don't think it would be too far afield from saying that it could make a nice movie. They were living in Austria, Vienna, Austria. He grew up there, and so did his wife. When the Nazis annexed Austria, they didn't have to attack it because the Austrian government was very favorable to the German government, so all they did was they just kind of annexed it, is the word that they used. Saved a lot of bullets, I guess. Kurt he knew English. And so when an international scouting group came to Vienna, they were looking for someone to help them tour. And he agreed to do that and met this lady named Jean Wagner, who was one of the leaders of that group. And I don't think he had any idea how that would turn out. Because later, when he decided he needed to leave Austria, good idea, he needed a sponsor. He needed someone to sign an affidavit that would say that they would take care of him, that he wouldn't become a burden on the U.S. government if he moved to America. And Jean, he corresponded with Jean, and Jean agreed to be his sponsor, and he was able to get out of Austria. So I think I've covered this. So he came to America, and Gene was from Chicago, so where else are you going to go? Chicago. So he had learned the photography business while he was in Austria, and had become quite proficient as a photographer and as a darkroom technician. So he knew how to develop film and to print pictures, and this turns out to be a skill that he could use in America. So Edith, his wife, eventually, I think, I can't find anything to support this, but I'm sure since they had been dating in Austria, his first goal when he came to America was to also sponsor Edith and get her out of Austria. So they came to Chicago and they were married in 1939 in America. I thought it was interesting. I learned that Edith had her job here in Chicago, the famous home of Spiegels. And one of the first things, you know, as a kid, you learn things by osmosis. And my parents had a Spiegel catalog. And of course they were sent out. And so, you know, it was like the Encyclopedia Britannica for a kid, because looking through those pages of the catalog, you were learning all sorts of things you didn't understand you were learning. Wow. Not just the pictures of women in bras. There were them, but so she assembled those. She also had a photographic background and was great, I'm sure, at helping them lay out the pages of the catalog. So Jim was born, as it says here, March 13th, 1947. He and I share the same age. He's a little bit, one year older than I am. So and I was able to meet with him thanks to a gentleman in the audience here today, Alan Postelnick. So I thank Alan for setting that up. He is in a home in Rio Rancho, so close but not that close. But he's still a very engaging person, and you'll get to see him in a video I'm including too. So his first job was with a company called Bass Photo in Chicago. Now maybe anybody heard of Bass Photo? So they were a major camera and photo retailer in the Chicago area, and nationwide famous among photographers in that era. And of course, Kurt was a hard worker, and Bass saw that, and Charlie promoted him till he was general manager of Bass Photo. Bass wanted to expand and come to the West, and he asked Kurt, would you come with me? So they set off on a car trip to investigate places where Bass Photo might be able to set up a Western branch. They visited San Jose, California. They visited maybe Denver, Colorado. I'm not sure about Denver. But on that trip, they visited Albuquerque. And Kurt kind of fell in love with Albuquerque. And one of the things that he said is that it was affordable. And I guess, you know, if you got to have something you're known for, being affordable is better than no. So in November of 1950, they came to Albuquerque, and Elizabeth, what was her name? Elizabeth Simpson had just built the building, and it was supposed to be two smaller stores, 3417 and 3415 Central, as it was called then, East Central, not Central Northeast. But they went ahead and leased it. And Kurt knew he needed more space than just a half of it, so in this brand new building that had two places, he immediately tore down the center wall and made it into one. But the as it was said earlier or later, the buildings were twins. So the bathrooms were kind of mirrored images of each other. There was 2 bathrooms, one for 17, one for 15, and they had basements. I've never been in the basement there. Anybody been in the basement of Kurt's camera? And
There it was.
there it was. This is a picture I took in 2015. I was kind of on an assignment for a planning company in town, and they wanted pictures of Nob Hill. So I'm shooting pictures of Nob Hill. I had no idea that when I shot this picture that it would soon, in my lifetime, not exist anymore. In fact, I think this place is gone, this place is gone, and this place is a different place. So, things change. And by the way, there is a neon museum in town, or at least that's changing too. The Garcia family they're into saving signs. And he developed, or that's not the right word, develop is a camera term. He created a museum that's downtown of all these signs that he has found. Many of them were in really bad shape. He's had them restored at great expense. And it's really a privilege to have been in there. And the Enchanted Lens Camera Club got an opportunity to go there one day, and some of the members I know that went on that trip are in the audience today. I'm not sure that it's going to be available much for longer, because another company has leased that building, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to all those signs. Carlos Garcia is in love with those signs, so I'm sure he's going to have to find another place to put them. I hope he does, because it's a marvelous museum of signs. This was an advertisement. You're going to see a lot of things from the local newspaper here, but this is an advertisement that was put in the paper 2 years in 1952 after it had opened in 1950. And so Kurt was thanking Albuquerque for being a good place to run his business. And here's the wording from that ad, a little bit larger. And I think, I don't know, I didn't meet Kurt, but I would say this was a sincere statement on his part. So here are some newspaper advertisements for Kurt's. By the way, there was a story, somebody from overseas came to the store and they said, "I'd like to see some coral." And they said, "We don't have any coral here." "What do you mean? It's right in your name." So one of Edith's requirements or jobs, I guess, she did much of, I'm not sure if it's 100%, but much of the film processing, the black and white film processing. Remember, we're in the 50s, so color was a new thing. But there was a little place for a darkroom in the back of the store, and she did the black and white processing and printing, actually. So if you got, you know, your small little prints, they had been touched by Edith. The color film was either sent to Brooks, which is now gone. Brooks isn't in town anymore, but I have been scanning slides that were taken by the planning department also for the museum, and many of those slides have the frames on them that say Brooks photo. One of the features that they did is that if you dropped off your Kodak color film, that they would put it in an airmail bag, By 4 o'clock each day, it would go out that night, and they advertised a 48-hour turnaround. So here's that comment about Ozzie and Harriet. I think it's funny, I'm a dog lover, so the fact that he included his dog in the commercials, I hope KOB has kept those. You know, some of the earlier television was on a media which was not preserved, and it's possible that it may not exist, but I'm going to sure give it a college try. Another thing that they sponsored was a news program which was called the Request Performance. I don't know that we would call any news show today a performance. They certainly are, but they don't call them that anymore. And here's a photo of Kurt, but I'm very sure he was proud of this 1962 Chevy that was used for the business. So beyond the Central Avenue store, they expanded, and they had a number of other stores. One of them's Coronado Center. There was one in the Sims building. The Sims building had just been opened, I guess, as a business place, and Kurt's camera had a location in the Sims building. And of course this one is in front of the Central Avenue store. And this advertisement just shows all the brands that they carried. Now, I know it's hard to kind of imagine that in 2025, but stores often had to have physical things to sell. They had to buy them, put them on the shelves, and then know enough about them to explain them to you to sell them. And so Kurt's was very old school in that regard. One of the things that Charlie Bass helped Kurt was that he basically gave the manufacturers of all these cameras, he gave them basically an okay, a thumbs up that says, Kurt's a good guy. If you give him credit and you sell him or give him those products, he will pay you back. Now remember, in the 50s, I'm not sure how free credit was, either from business people buying inventory or even just people getting credit at the store. You just whip out your plastic and buy your $2,000 camera outfit. You actually had to save it up and then pay with a check. Anybody remember checks? Stupid me, I ran out of checks a couple of years ago and went and bought some more. And of course the smallest denomination, or the smallest amount I could get is 250. I have used 10. So maybe I'll live long enough to use them all. More advertisements. This one's from '83. And I'm not sure who did the artwork for these, but I'm just given what I've learned about Kurt, I would imagine he was involved in it. I mean, he wouldn't have let that be somebody else's responsibility. Every month was some new thing. This is Fantastic February, you know, alliteration. Now, here's a later photo of Kurt, probably close to closing the store. But they were quite free with their money and donations and support. He was a big supporter of the arts, classic arts like the symphony. They were also very prominent members of the synagogue and gave much of their money and time in supporting the Jewish diaspora here in Albuquerque. And we're going to talk about it. In 1978, Jim, who had his own history, came back to Albuquerque and was the general manager for Kurtz for a while, until in 1978 he bought it from his father. And he's quick to tell me he was not given it, he bought it. So this information I got from the interview that Diane and Richard did, and I wouldn't have known it otherwise. He said he had this idea that he was going to write a book on Israel and was going to illustrate it with his own photographs. So in '73 he took off to Israel, and he's going to live there and absorb the culture, take photos, and then write a book about it. Well, he lasted 6 months. I'm not sure, I didn't ask him. In thinking about it in my terms, that would be way too much work. I don't have the stick-to-itiveness to write a book about anything. He met a lady named Carmen. All he said was her name during this interview, so she was a, hello and goodbye. But she did influence him in one way, and that is she lived in Seattle, and so he moved to Seattle and worked for a company called Seattle Filmworks. And years ago, when I was a young man, I actually was a customer of Seattle's Filmworks. Their plan was they used these movie film strips that the movies would buy strips in hundreds of feet, but they wouldn't use it all. So there was unexposed movie film, 35mm movie film, and Seattle Filmworks bought that. And their deal was, you shoot pictures with our film, and we will give you back negatives and slides. And they were cheaper than Kodak. So of course, as a kid looking for a bargain, I used them. But those slides faded, and they basically were gone in 20 years. Whereas my dad took a picture in Yosemite with Kodak color film in 1952, actually, and it's as bright and beautiful and colorful today as it was when he shot it. I've talked about things that change. Kodak only exists in our memory. Well, I think they still have they do stuff. I think they make copiers. So in 1978, he purchased Kurt's camera Corral, and it became his. And this is a picture of Jim. I think this was in an article that might have been in the Tribune. Speaking of things that are gone.
All the cameras in the back.
And let's see if this works. I've had this work and not work.
So this clip, Roland, was done by Casa Television?
Done by Casa Television as one of their, Casa was a TV station in town. It was subsequently sold a number of times, and it exists as Telemundo, I think, now. The company that owns it now owns Telemundo in town, but Casa is completely gone. It was Channel 2, and they did, this was like one of their, what would you call it, personality news. It wasn't a news story, it was kind of talking about things. And by the way, while we're waiting for this, I know there's some photographers in the group, but maybe there aren't all of them. Today with digital, you take your picture with a digital camera, but you're only half done at that point. Then you take it to your computer and you use programs to, as we in the business call, post-process it. So you take that negative, that digital negative, and then you work on it to be the best it can be. And we call that post. There are two big, not just two, but the ones I'm aware of are made by Adobe. One's called Photoshop, you probably heard of that. The other one that they produce is called Lightroom. Lightroom is a easier one, I think, to use, and it's the one that I use. And you get the joke, dark room, light room. I guess it's because you keep the lights on while you're working on your digital pictures. Should we try it?
Go ahead and try it. We should be getting sound through the...
Okay, so if I press this,
The digital age has made it possible for anyone to be a photographer. Your point-and-shoot camera, your smartphone, even digital SLR cameras like this make it possible to capture any moment, anywhere, anytime. Sounds good, right?
There's a real advantage to the digital age in the transmission, the immediacy. To say, I Wi-Fi'd this, I just got it, the gratification, that instant gratification. But there's no permanence.
The art form of photography, as Jim Kubié, president of Kurt's Camera Corral, would say, has gone from the dark room to the light room. Adobe Lightroom, to be specific.
After the film was shot, you would then take the film, then in the dark room, you'd take the film out of the canister, put it onto the reel, and then into a tank. Then you'd use film developer, then put into fixer, and then wash thoroughly.
The painstaking tasks once done with chemicals, enlarging equipment, and developing tricks can now be done with just a few clicks of the mouse. But is that necessarily a good thing?
For any of us who have printed black and white, that first print, everybody remembers it. It's magic. Yeah. You've got a white piece of paper, you put it in this liquid, and all of a sudden an image comes out. Wow. That you created. That you created, and it's absolute magic that it comes up, and that just sticks with people. They'll never forget that first time that they saw that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there are too many magic moments in digital.
In addition to the loss of those magical moments, there's the potential loss of the image entirely. As we all know, hard drives, SD cards, and data storage can fail. Remember floppy disks? All those SD cards could become obsolete sooner than you might think.
I don't know how many images you can keep on a cell phone, or how many are going to be recorded onto some kind of semi-archival medium like a CD or a DVD. And then even that, we don't know the longevity of a DVD or a CD. We know the longevity of certainly of a black and white photograph that was processed correctly. Matthew Brady's images are still around. And that's Civil War stuff.
Do you think, moving forward in the 21st century, because obviously digital here to stay, do you think there will be a point that this will be completely obsolete?
I think it's going to be rare. You know, obsolete. I don't know. It depends on what people value. If the value system continues as it's going, where nothing has value, then yeah, this is obsolete. And for a lot of people, it's already obsolete because it has no, So what? There's that. I've got this photograph to show you. So what? And so if that attitude continues and relevancy of again the books, the printed page, books, photographs. If they have no value anymore, then then it's on its way.
Jim and the staff of Kurt's Camera Corral have endured technological changes for the 65 years they've been in business. In addition to a photographer's go-to shop for gear, they function somewhat as a museum, preserving the hard copy heritage that embodies the art of photography in its basest form.
An image, the difference between an image and a picture or a photograph is, in effect, hard copy. And I think that photography's biggest asset, if not its only long-term asset, is as a documentary medium. If you don't have a document, is it really is it worth taking the picture? It's like the old philosophical conundrum of tree falls in the woods, nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
While a subculture of hard copy photo developing is on the rise, it may not be enough to sustain the art forever. Only time will tell what will happen to the once beloved darkroom. For more information on the iconic Kurtz Camera Corral, head over to casa.com.
He tells you to head to casa.com.
Archive.org.
Long gone. I don't know if you were able to hear it there, but basically when asked the question, what do you think about the longevity of digital? And he goes, you know, so who knows? I can't imagine the next thing that will be in photography. But there might be a next thing where a group like this in 50 years is going to be looking at the history of digital photography. Here are some photos that were taken by Diane on a visit to Kurtz in 2012. And I feel fortunate to have gone and been and seen this store myself, so I was able to witness it. And it was like a museum in the sense that you go to a museum and you're just awestruck by everything that's on every side of you. And it was like a smack in the face. There was 100 things to see in every view that you could make. Packed full of stuff. And again, going back to buying inventory, can you imagine what the inventory in this store at any one time, certainly at the close in 2017, what that was? I actually went into the store during the fire sale, basically the last week, in which there was, you know, come on in and make us an offer kind of a situation. And so much of the stuff I didn't have any need for because I had already switched to digital, and so I would be buying it to put on my shelf as a museum piece.
Do we know what happened to all these vintage cameras?
Ellen, do you happen to know? Oh, yes.
Jim was my brother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
And two things. Yes, the final shipment, there was a big van that took the rest of it to a dealer in Southern California who's very interested in it. And
some went to the museum in Santa Fe.
yeah, someone to Santa Fe.
Oh,
Cool.
And just as a piece of information, the cat in the background, in that picture, they fostered cats in that store.
Oh,
And if you
my.
came in, you might go home with a cat.
Like that.
My wife and I like cats too, so when we go into a store and there's a cat in the store, we immediately love that store.
oh, no, cats.
So this is a story that he related in the interview, and I think it's fantastic. His 6-year-old son said, here are the 3 tenets of being a good businessman. Be good to your customers, work hard, and know what you're doing.
Good idea. Cameras.
So, yeah. The store on Central is now a cannabis dispensary, and strangely enough, the one on Montevo is also. And there's no connection, but that's just how it worked out. And I guess that's time moving on, or moving backwards. So part 1, and I've gone over my time, so I'm going to have to rush a bit. So more Jim Kubié, and by the way, it's Kubié. That accent on the end makes it not Kubi. And I don't know if you could hear it, but the gentleman from Casa called him Jim Kubié. And I'm sure Jim didn't hear that because he'll correct you every time you make that mispronunciation. And Jill Harkey of the Photo Archives here, she goes, oh, you better put that Kubié on there because if he ever hears you talk, he's going to be mad at you. I also made the error, by the way, of thinking when I was initially doing this that it was Kurtz Camera Corral. I thought, oh, that's cute, they're all K's. But I was scolded about that, and I thought, well, why is he so angry about that? The initials would be KKK. Not a good look for a Jewish person.
Is Jim still living?
Yes, he is. He lives in Rio Rancho in a memory care facility there. And again, when I met him, he was sharp and engaging, and you know, we just had a great conversation. I wanted to show him some of the photos that you're going to see because I wanted to hear his remembrance and comments on them. And he did. He provided all sorts of comments. So these were taken in 1971.
Wow.
Jim was 24. And here's the story, and I'll condense it and change it a bit. Basically, Jim saw himself as a street photographer, or a photographer that shoots scenes that are happening without posing, without setup. You know, he just liked to go out and take pictures and see what happened later. And he was very talented. He used one of the best cameras that you could use in 1971. I'll show you a picture of it. He had an eye. He just, you know, and I'm in the camera club, the Enchanted Lens Camera Club, throwing a plug for that. I would recommend anybody interested in photography to join the ELCC, as those in the know call it. You will learn, if you pay attention during the ELCC meetings, you will learn how to be a better photographer. And so it took me about 10 years of being in the club before I reached even half the capability that I think Jim had natively. He went to the Albuquerque Academy, and this is a photo that someone sent me. I won't say who, he's in the audience, sent me that was from, I think, a yearbook.
Yeah.
And then the picture on the right is a picture I took of him recently. This was his camera. If you know cameras, the Leica M3 was and is still. You try and find a used 1950s M3 and it's going to cost you a couple of $1,000 without a lens. That's extra. So, you know, you make something good and precision, it lasts. So the Wheels Museum, I've given a couple of talks at the Wheels Museum. In fact, Liba tells me the story that she got a call from Jim and he asked her out on a date. And she was very excited. She went home and got all dressed up and was very excited. When the time came for him to knock on the door, no Jim. I guess he had forgotten, and so he stood her up. But she didn't hold that against him. So this photo is a amalgam, or something he created in the darkroom, where he took multiple negatives and mushed them together and then made this card, which Wheels still uses to this day for invitations and notices. So here we go. I'm not going to comment on all of these. Some of them kind of speak for themselves. Remember, this is 1971. The rail yards, I believe, closed in 77 or 75, but soon thereafter. And at the time, the sole purpose of the rail yards, which they had been working on steam engines, and there are many photographs of steam engines in any level of disarray or disassembly being worked on by the rail yards in the big, big buildings. If you've been by on 2nd Street, you know those are big buildings. Those days were gone, obviously. Diesel had already come in, and there was no need to repair steam engines. And much of those employees that filled the warehouses at that time had already gone. What the rail yards was doing in 1971 was mostly repairing work vehicles. So that would be work trains, both the trains that would hold the workers and sometimes overnight them at remote locations, or also the little cars that ran on the roads that brought you to the site. And so you're going to see all these men working. They are all men, unfortunately, and I think they're all white men. So a certain administration would be very happy that there was no DEI at this time in our nation's history. It was all white men. And in fact, there's one picture I'm not showing you, which had a Playboy calendar in the back of it, and there was enough detail to show the lady that was posing. So the story is, he's out doing his street photography, and he goes down to the rail yards, and he's just taking pictures of train cars out on the tracks. And one of the detectives that works for the rail company came up and said, this is private property and it's dangerous, you can't be here. He goes, really? Is there anybody I can ask for permission to be here? So the detective kind of went, oh yeah. You just go over to that office and you just ask them for permission, and that's what you need to do. Now most people would just say, yeah, not going to bother because they're not going to let me do it. That's what I would do. Nope, he went over to that office, walked right in, said, hey, I'd like to take some pictures. Is it okay for me to get permission to do that? And the manager said, sure. All we'd ask you to do is wear a little badge that says that you're authorized and put on a hard hat. And so just for the price of asking, he got to wander through this facility. Now, these are folks, they all have hard hats on. It's a dangerous location. They're working with overhead cranes carrying thousands of pounds of metal. And all he did was ask. I think that is amazing. As a photographer myself, I need to maybe learn from that, that just ask.
These were slides or photographs?
These were taken with an M3 Leica, which only was a film camera.
And then you scanned these.
Yes, he actually had them developed, and every one of these prints, by the way, he touched. He printed every one of these prints you'll see. So that's not an easy automatic process. And knowing him as a photographer, when he projected from the enlarger down to the paper, he messed with it and got it to be the way he wanted it to be. So it was a long, laborious process and took some knowledge of a lot of knowledge about what's going on. So now they have been scanned and these are digital versions, but they were original prints that he touched. Why is it? I'm touching the wrong thing. And this guy seems to have posed. I think he saw somebody with a hard hat and a visitor's badge, thought, oh, the railroad wants pictures of us. So it was kind of without saying anything. He didn't have, can I take your picture? The guy just shows up, and then this guy stood by his desk.
Is he holding a time card, or do you know what he's holding there?
I think he was holding what they call a worksheet. So as parts go through this system, I think they were identified as to be what it came from, what work needed to be done on it, and who to give it to when it was done. So, and there was, you can't see it maybe at this enlargement, but if you look at it, you can see that there's a wire string on it that could be attached to a part. I just love the little still life vignettes that he decided to concentrate on. And remember when in America people used to work on big metal things and fix things? None of the employees, by the way, were Chinese either. That joke fell flat. Here's the beautiful restroom facilities, and there's the toilet paper is hanging from the door. So you really had to close the door, even if you weren't nervous about having, you had to close the door to get a hold of the paper. Oh, by the way, notice the clock. It's just before 3 o'clock. Now, I think the shifts back then, you went from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. So these pictures were taken at the latter part of the day, just before it was time to leave. And there are many more of these than I'm showing you today. And they're all available through Jill Hartke at the Photo Archives if you'd like to take a look at all of them. She's got them. And by that's another story. Jim donated these pictures to the museum. And of course, because the Kubié family has always supported the arts and the museum, it was just a natural thing for him to donate these to the museum for use as future research or history.
Roland, were these all taken on one day?
Yes. And I haven't been able to find what that day was, but it was 1971. This is called an anvil, for those of you that don't know how to work, and they're heavier than the world. Don't try lifting one by yourself.
Ask Coyote.
Oh, the Coyote, that's right. The Acme company made that. So I love this one too, because, as a photographer, light is your paintbrush. And so he painted this. He chose this exposure, by the way. You can choose an exposure that would show all the detail on this restroom, but then that might be a boring picture. So what he chose to do is what I would call underexpose it, so that only the light. By the way, this camera did not have a meter on it. There's no automatic focus, no automatic meter, so he had to do all of that work himself. Here's one of those work trucks. Now, to get these smaller little cars onto the work site, they actually have to put them on a flatbed car. So he's now on one of the little cars on top of a flat car. By the way, this style of glasses this gentleman's wearing are coming back. It's the new fashionable thing to have this glass frame. And I think these guys are relaxing because, remember, it's the end of the day. They've worked their 8-hour shift. They're just waiting for the time clock to be ready to be massaged. The gentleman on the right here, Jim found out that that was his last day. He was retiring. So that explains that big smile on his face. This thing is called a lathe. So you can see he didn't ask everybody to pose. I mean, he just took pictures of them doing their jobs, which I just think is such great that he was able to do that, and makes these photos so historically accurate and correct.
Any ideas how many rolls he shot?
No, but that's another thing I failed to mention.
Yeah, you'd have to
The film canisters came in either 24 shots or 36. There was nothing bigger than that at the time, at least not for the Leica M3. And so I asked him that question, well, how did you get all these shots? And when he left that morning, he knew he had his camera, essential, and he had pockets full of film canisters. And so he just used whatever he had. When you run out, you leave. Yes, sir.
Just curious, he's obviously using ambient light. These pictures look pretty sharp and not grainy. Are you impressed by that? I mean,
Oh, I'm impressed by everything.
I mean,
These are well shot, they're very sharp, and by the way, these have been scanned at 600 dots per inch. And you could scan them at 24 dots per inch, and all of that native resolution that's in that print will come out even sharper. It's amazing. The museum chooses 600 because they're trying to save on hard disk space. But if someone was to want one of these to blow up, life size on their wall, you could get it, and they would just scan it at a higher resolution so that it wouldn't break down when it's enlarged.
but you didn't do any sharpening or blurring or anything
No.
like that?
I did not touch these because they're Jim's, not mine. And so I didn't want to mess with them. Yes, sir?
So these came from the very prints that Jim made?
Absolutely.
He did the darkroom work?
He did.
Okay. So they are a semblance of what he wanted them to look like?
Yes. And I must admit to a great sense of awe to be holding that print and know that Jim Kubié created it.
The radio arts buildings also are really good at catching light. The whole building was structured.
Yeah, many windows.
Not spend any money on lighting.
And another thing, think about it. Today we don't think about all these lights. There's an expense to that, both the installation of it and the running of it. And so they didn't have a lot of lights in that building. They did, but they relied on the ambient light because it was less expensive. I really love this one because in photography we talk about something called leading lines. Whenever you can get converging lines, it leads to your subject. And what does he have? He has two guys right where those leading lines take your eye. That's why I say he knew what he was doing, and it shows. I love this one too. It shows action, and you get the sense that that door is heavy. It takes that man's weight and his muscles to just get that thing moving. This also shows a sense of scale, I think, because the man is sort of dwarfed by the doors and the buildings around him. If anybody's been in I also, through the club, had a opportunity to go and wander around these buildings. This is now almost 10 years ago. And one of the things that I learned is that the floor in these buildings are made out of wooden bricks. And they use them for a number of reasons. Number one, they were using a lot of creosote during that time, and it absorbed all of the oils and spills and creosote that might have been dropped on them. And if you dropped a metal part on a wood brick, you didn't damage that metal part. So it made a lot of sense to have wood bricks.
They were ingrained, which is more important.
Yes,
Side
and
grain would have scratched or broken. But
you understand what end grain means? Instead of this way, they were this way. So that meant you needed a lot of them, because you weren't getting a lot of square feet in one brick. Here's an industrial wash fountain, and I'm going to tell you a personal story. When I was much younger, I was below 20, and I had an opportunity to go into an industrial bathroom, and I was the only one in there, and this round thing is there, and I thought, that's the strangest looking urinal I have ever seen. and I was about ready to use it until I looked over along the wall and realized, oh, there's the ones. So I would have hated to be halfway through my business and have someone come in and say, why is that boy peeing in our faucet?
I was up on the second floor there too, of buildings,
And-
this one.
And by the way, these are neat because this thing here held powdered soap. So you have this lever here, and you get your hands wet, and you would hit the lever, and you'd get powdered soap, and then put it back in the water. And it was very, you could see that it would work real well when you've got a whole bunch of people all at one time. I say people, I meant men, coming in. This is a building that is gone from the facility now. It's called the Roundhouse. They had the ability to bring a train in and would go over this turntable, and the turntable would align itself to one of these doors in a curved building, and then they would go in and be able to work on that train equipment or engine and then send it back out onto the rails using the turntable. And I'm sorry that this building is gone. I think it's one of the coolest buildings on that site, and it's not there. But we have a photo of it. Another one of my favorites. You wonder why did they take a picture of that car? But I think he saw that lady looking out of the window, and that makes this so interesting to me.
I'm looking at the lines. Oh, here we go.
Again, the one on the right, the light coming in through that archway is a special thing. I think he saw that and took a picture of that too. Talk about the railroads had white engineers and everybody else was black. And so, I don't know if he meant to, but he took all these pictures of these employees and captured kind of a moment in time in the 1970s of our nation's history in which certain professions were all done by certain races. And this is the way people used to travel, with their fancy coats and their dogs. And I looked at this, that lady either has 3 legs, or there's someone hiding behind her because they saw somebody with a camera. So which one do you think it is? This building is gone, it's not there anymore, but of course, wouldn't you have a cafe across from a place that hires a bunch of men who probably don't make their own lunches in the morning? And he caught those 2 guys just having a moment on the side of the Depot Cafe. This is the work truck picture that became part of the Wheels card. And here was the reason he was first there, which was to just take rail pictures. Again, leading lines. If you've been a photographer for any length of time, leading lines just jump right out at you. And thank you. So it is just now 3 o'clock, and I think I have time for some questions, if I can answer them.
I noticed in one of those earlier photos of trees with bare branches, so maybe that dated unconcerned was during the winter or something on that day, because they're bare branches, so it's looks like a winter time.
Yeah, astute observation, probably was. Let's just call it winter of '71.
Any idea of what kind of film that was he used?
No, and I forgot to ask him when we were there. The 2 biggies were Pan-X, which was 125 ASA. Does anybody know what that means? Or Tri-X, which was 400 ASA. And oh boy, if you were going to be in a dark area, you wanted to get Tri-X. And then, if you developed your own film, you could push the Tri-X to 800, 1600, you know, I don't know. Again, the comment was made earlier about how sharp these are. The Panax was the best black and white film for low grain and very sharp images, so it's probably Panax, but I don't know. Do you know, Alan?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. What's the protocol if you're doing street photography? Do you need to ask someone before you take the picture, or you just go ahead and take it?
I should have been repeating the questions, and I haven't been. What is the protocol when you're a street photographer? Do you need to ask? And the answer is maybe. So there are those who do ask, and there are those who don't ask. And I have had this conundrum, and I've decided I'm going to not ask unless he's a linebacker for a football team. Then I'll probably ask.
Or if they're children, right? That's another issue.
In our weird society in which, you know, children are considered sacrosanct and private, nowadays I would not take a picture of a child without the parents' permission and knowledge. But other than that, adults, they're fair game. My book.
In public.
There's a book done by Richard and Susan Flint called Overhaul, which is a social history of the rail yards. And they document the composition of the workforce over time. And generally, your comment about the Anglo quality of the workforce is correct, but you had a picture of a Hispano among your group, and the people in Barelas and South Broadway who worked there were working at lower level jobs, but they were there. And then at the end, you have some opening up of that. And the same with the the railroad unions. There were 6 unions. One of them was the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And I guess the kitchen staff was also part of that, and that was the leading black union in the AFL-CIO. But then again, that starts to change at the end as well.
Joe's point about the racial breakout of the rail yards is correct. I made a joke calling it all white, and I'm going to include the Hispanics in the white category. So yes, there were Hispanics, and Morelos did provide a lot of the workers. They lived right next to the rail yards, and so yes, there was a Hispanic component, but still no women, no blacks, not working on the mechanical stuff.
A few women at the very end.
During World War II, there were women there.
Right.
And there were women doing, women's secretarial jobs. But
And he didn't catch any of them because he was out in the shops.
When the trains went west through Laguna, they picked up a lot of Native American people. And they actually have a community in California that was founded by Laguna natives who ended up in the area.
Barstow and Richmond. Barstow, Richmond, Winslow, and Gallup had Laguna colony workers.
Right.
Right. And again, those were work crews that were actually on the line and not the ones that were working at the yards.
Right.
You're right. Yes, ma'am.
When a company like the Santa Fe decides to come into some place like Albuquerque and build a facility like this, do they do all their own in-house design and construction and maintenance of the buildings, not the railway, but the buildings? Is that the Santa Fe, or is that a contractor or a...
So the question is, did the Santa Fe Railroad design and build their own facilities? I don't know that for sure, but I believe that's true. They had many engineers who actually worked for them. In fact, Angus Grant, who founded our utilities here in Albuquerque and actually built a building which was named the Grant Opera House, Angus Grant was a Canadian who worked for the railroad, building or designing and constructing bridges for them. And so I'm glad that we had Angus Grant. And by the way, we have a city here in New Mexico named after Mr. Grant's. Yes?
Just curious, with the pictures with humans in them, did Mr. Kubié identify any of the people in those pictures on the back of the pocket?
No, as far as no, he didn't.
You are saying that this archive is available to people through the museum?
Yes, yes it is. Right behind us basically is where the photo archives are. They would like you to make an appointment to go there because they normally keep the place locked up. But Jill would be happy to allow you to see all of the pictures. And now that I've digitized them, you can actually have digital copies on your own computer. Yes?
I just wanted to make a comment because there are so many people here with photography as being your interest, that the Albuquerque Public Schools have, through their fine arts department at every high school, most of them have a big photography program, and they have dark rooms, and so photography is still here, and the yearly big, I want to call, it's not really a competition, but it's the big art thing that's called Metro. There's about 7 or 8 different photography categories that range from what he did, what people did all through, before the digital, and so just the straight photographs, and then where it's film photography, but it's manipulated, and then they get into the digital. But I would say that photography is alive and well at high schools and APS.
Yes.
So,
And again.
And it's making a comeback, I think.
Just like people are buying long playing albums and buying styluses for their turntables. We at the Enchanted Lens Camera Club do not discriminate against the device that you use to take a picture. Normally all of us have advanced digital cameras worth thousands of dollars. But if you want to join the camera club and this is your only camera, you're certainly welcome to join us and be a part of the group, because this will take a picture, but to create a photograph you need to have some knowledge, experience, and you need to be able to see what makes a good photograph over just a snapshot. Yes, sir.
Roland, just second what Janet said. My nephew's son took a photography class in high school just a few years ago, and they used film cameras. They had a dark room. They did developing. Later they would do use digital, but they went through that process. So I was encouraged by that.
I would recommend anybody who has a digital camera to maybe take a class in black and white photography and go into the darkroom and see how much easier your job is today than it used to be back then.
I took a photography class at UNM. I think it was almost the last semester I was there, in the late 60s or 70s. And it was 1970, I guess it was. And yeah, it was a big dark room. It was down in the basement of Sarah Reynolds Hall. And there was enlargers. We learned all sorts of techniques, printing, and so it was a thing. And we go out and scatter. When we go to places like this, go out to the streets and take some pictures. So we head for graveyards and rail yards, and things would creep people out usually, old stuff.
Yeah. Then
tied in with that conversation, in 1972, I bought a Minolta 7000i from Kurtz. And about 15 years ago, I donated that camera to Rio Grande Photo class that they had. And I got a nice thank you note from one of the students that ended up using it.
Good. All right, I think we're at our end of our time. I'm getting the hook over here.
October